My name is James Baraney. I am a professor of first-year experience, more or less. I kind of help run boot camp at the Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design, help get students who are coming right out of high school acclimated for professional collegiate studies in art and design for the rest of their career. And then I teach advanced classes, drawing and painting, anatomy for me, and then also advanced animation at times. So I have been doing murals, public murals, since 2017, and all of mine, very much like most of my studio work, have a rich history in history. I'm very concerned to tell the narrative, the inclusive narrative and diverse narrative of each community that I serve. So this one is fun because obviously we're on a port city, so you have a huge mariner theme here. So ships became, and the idea of vessels on the water was a big theme. I went as far back as indigenous culture. We found some great reference prints of Menominee and Winnebago, which would have been akin to this area, using, not in the lake obviously, but using canoes to harvest rice in nearby plateaus. So we incorporated that, and then you have a couple of, this community has a couple of famous ship sinkings that have happened, so I had to do a lot of research. One tragically burned, and several lives were lost at the lake. So we have recreated that moment in the mural. The ship is on fire, struggling to stay afloat. And then as the composition segues to the side, the stoic turn-of-the-century lake house is incorporated. That's still in your harbor. And the waves are just pounding it without mercy. Seagulls are flying rampant in the sky. And then as the water's calm, you see a schooner. So then we start to make a transition in time. And the schooner, what follows that then are calmer waters. The sky, less angry. More a beautiful kind of a Wisconsin sunset. And then there's a huge focus in the mural of three individuals, a woman, an older gentleman, and a young boy with a dog sitting on one of the piers, kind of showing their trophy of fish that they've caught. And then as we segue all the way out, we see the actual marina, and with the older historic buildings, all the federal design and the simple slap-up kind of townhouse, row house kind of situations that we were able to find. And then I believe maybe from the 50s or 60s, we found in one of the archives in Port Washington a beautiful, very long, stretched out rowboat getting fixed. I believe it's a rowboat or a boat or a skiff. And there's a gentleman in there kind of wrangling with things. And that's what harbors at the very, very end before we get to the end of the lighthouse. These images are built in Photoshop, manipulated digitally, and then what I do is I use an Italian Renaissance grid transfer system, so that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And each square, if it's blue sky, the water crashing, or somebody's face, every square has kind of an allocated area. And then what'll happen after I grid, it'll start to look like a stained glass window. I do an underpainting process where it's very chunked out in colors, but that's all been predetermined to add structure underneath what goes on top, and that's what I call the top coat. That's where I get all of the detail, and I can focus in on the embellishments. So what I'll do is I'll work about 10 feet of underpainting, come back, work almost up to that point with the top coat, and then just keep working down the wall. And then when I'm getting close at the end of the mural, that'll be kind of a dance. I'll be walking around with specific colors, back and forth. The grid will be gone. It will be completely embedded into the image. And then just kind of using my skills that have been taught to me over years and years, just working it like a painting. Is this coming forward enough? Because at a certain point, the digital composition just gets us to an idea. It still becomes a painting. So you're always gaining something and losing something in that translation process. And I believe we started this process with a committee from the community, I'd say almost 4 years ago. And originally I was slated to do a different building, but they found this one and they thought my concept would be a better placed position here. So I've been waiting patiently to come to port and start this process. And it's kind of all coming to a full head right now. So we'll see how much I get done. This is a rare bird that I'm not on a lift. It's really nice not being on a lift, but it also has its challenges because I have to do a ton of push-ups and get up and down and constantly be on the ground here. So we'll see how the speed, the growth and development of this happens. But obviously I'm also, I'm completely at service to the weather. So I'm at a point now that in the process, this is very clear and evident, but what you have in front of me at the moment, I have 8 feet by 8 feet by 10 feet or so of this underpainting, which is when I take the final design, fractalize it, put it through a couple of different modifications in Photoshop, so it breaks it down to planar form and color, and now the transition is also in color because the background still retains color, but we have new portraits where we're removing the color, and you're going to see more achromatic or black and white all the way down that rest of the wall. My next task here, I'll remove the tape so I can see where my gridding is, and then this is the gentleman holding his trophy trout, smoking his stogie. But I'll start to find edges and line work and start to pull him out, almost like a drawing process. Not that I'm gonna draw it, but I will be finding those edges and those contours and then deepening and enriching the tones, any of the texture on the fish, modeling. If I can't see something, I'll model it or find something to help support what's going on here. But once I get the line work done, just like I'm doing with her, then I'll start to tonally enhance him in the same way. And she looked the exact same way the last time I was here. It was all fractal glass, it looked like a shattered window, and slowly the development happened. So this is that underpainting process, the top coat, and then at the very end I float for a day or two and just tweak and finish things as I feel that they should be, because at that point the entire design has been laid out and it belongs where it needs to be for correct proportions. From time to time when I'm using historic photographs and I really like the essence or the feel that's coming from the photo, especially emotionally, it's really important to me. I'll notice sometimes the photos are really granular. They might be from an old daguerreotype or tintype, and no matter how much I zoom in, I can only make out the most faint, even if I do a contrast and adjustment, which I have done on this original image. I'm just showing you the original. There's a lot of information here, but there's a lot hidden. Another tool I have been having a lot of success with, I might take a section of an image, let's just say the dog as an example, and I'll bring that dog, that photograph in from AI, into AI rather. I'll bring the photograph, the original document, into AI and ask it, tell it exactly what I want to do, give it a prompt, and then ask it if it can render a slightly better version or a more defined version. And so now I work back and forth between the version that AI gave me and the actual photograph. So I have a compromise between the two. I find this connected oddly to AI in a futuristic manner, but I'm using it in a very specific way because I'm not asking it to generate a dog. I'm saying, take this image and give me modifications if you could. So I did a little bit of that with the dog, a little bit with the modeling on the boy's face, because the boy's face is almost completely blurred in the photograph. And this way it gives me something to respond to when I'm doing my final painting, coming back and forth. Now, these are all beautifully structured for me, and I can come back in and articulate moments very specific, while other moments will be very fluid. And that's how my work goes. There'll be moments that are just extremely tight and rendered, and then it just dissipates into mark making. Now we're getting into the kind of the last third segment here, and where I'm at this point is following the underpainting. I come in with linear structure. pull out the linear structure, and then I'll come back later this afternoon and start really modeling it through paint to make things three-dimensional and give it a sense of color and light. But something that's been happening that I'm super excited about, so many community members have been coming up wanting to share their own personal history with this marina, because this now opens up. We have the coal dock, one of the vessels that would have hauled coal, and this was taken right out of one of the historic archives that I found in the community. The only one I could find, however, was black and white. Wonderfully documented, but very limiting in its manner that I only have one image to work from. Black and white, everything in that tonal range can be determined. You can determine a color from it, but it's very difficult work. So once you know, a retired police officer came up and he had multiple color shots of this entire area. At some point in the 80s, there was kind of a massive overhaul of some of these buildings, and some of the space was redesigned. So now I have all the evidence of color. I have even more artifacts of other boats that were in the area. So I'm excited because I could add more believable artifacts into this painting, which is already based in truth. But doing that and using the community's involvement and input is fantastic. So that has been a wonderful godsend with this part of the process. The harbor, the marina area here in port, I'd say probably circa 1985, in the ballpark of that time period. Again, using some local photos that were just given to me, which have allowed me to reference color. So now the color is going to slowly start to dissipate and fade out as we get to the bow of our skiff here and the rowboat that the gentleman is fixing. And what's going to happen here is the water is going to be our segue. It's going to transition. The reflections that we can't see are showing up, the coal mining apparatus, etc. There's things here that aren't visible above but are visible in the reflection, which I think is important. And as we continue to segue further and further, the color will slowly fade away. We have a couple of Easter eggs hidden within this experience, little moments of articulation. There'll be people in a car, somebody else on a bicycle, etc. And then the background will just kind of, again, fade away so that we focus on this rowboat, which again was placed here to compositionally balance the beginning of the mural on the top of the hill, which is a very long stretched out canoe paying homage to the indigenous Potawatomi, Ojibwa, and the Menominee that are here. So this is a big area of transition, and it's extremely complicated to paint because it's all reflection. So I'm painting things upside down and inversed in an inverse manner. And not only are the elements reflecting, but I have to think about what the sky color would be. And again, we use this kind of beautiful Wisconsin sunset embedded into the image. So you're going to see a lot of pinks, possibly some oranges mixed in with the greens and the purples. Almost a beautiful triangle of the secondary colors, orange, purple, and green, kind of flaring up and then fading out until we get into what's called achromatic, just black and white transition. And that'll sum up the entire thing. So we'll go from about 1835 to approximately 1980-85, and that's the entire swath of time that this image depicts moments of Port Washington's history.